Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video. In this video, we're going to be restoring this iPhone 11 Pro. This phone has sustained a major impact to the back, not only completely shattering the glass and snapping the frame of the phone, but also leaving a massive dent behind. That dent has caused the insides to be pushed outward. The impact appears to have been so hard it's dislodged the screen, which has ripped off and is nowhere to be found. All that remains of that screen is its earpiece flex cable and the bezel, which used to hold it in place. I won this phone in an eBay auction along with an iPhone 7 Plus for 80 Australian dollars. This makes the cost per device 40 Australian dollars or around 25 USD. The phones were strangely packaged in paper towel, however I did receive what I ordered. While I did receive the two phones, I will only be looking at the iPhone 11 Pro in this video. But the iPhone 7 is bent, shattered and destroyed in a similar fashion to the iPhone 11 Pro. It appears its last owners have had some real anger issues. However, before we get started, I'd like to thank iFixit for sponsoring this video. Their ProTech Toolkit has been my go-to phone repair kit for many years. Housing 64 different bits, pry tools and spudges, it's an essential item for any repairer. Get parts, tools and guides at ifixit.com/HughJeffries or at the link below. Coming back to the iPhone, I'll start by removing the two pentalobe screws at the bottom of the device and remove what's left of the original display. Using a plastic pick, I can separate the display bezel from the frame. It's adhered into place and you'll usually need to apply some heat. However, given this bezel wasn't sitting flush anymore, I could find plenty of gaps to squeeze my plastic pick into. Lifting it up and out of place, I can start by removing the two brackets covering the two battery connections. All these screws are tri-wing, so you'll need a specialized bit to be able to remove those screws. After disconnecting the battery, I can then remove the bracket covering up the several display cables which we'll need to remove. As you can see, what remains of our original display cables are still connected to the board. Unplugging those, I can disconnect the earpiece flex cable and get the old bezel out of the way. Bringing in a brand new screen, we're going to be able to test out our iPhone 11 Pro to see if it even works. Connecting up the cables, we can press the power button and see that it is charging. After leaving it for a few minutes, you can see it successfully booted up but is locked with a passcode. Now on the eBay listing, it said the iCloud for this phone had been turned off. After looking that up, you can see not only is it on, but it's in lost mode. Given iCloud tracks your location, I drove to a random place and inserted a SIM card into the phone. As soon as it connected to the internet, the device automatically wiped. After a lot of back and forth with the seller claiming they had removed it from their account, they finally figured out that it wasn't removed. So they removed it from their account. I did ask them what happened to the device, but after that, they stopped replying. With the phone unlocked, we can now transform the device back into mint condition. For this, I have a new display and adhesive, a new housing, battery, Wi-Fi antenna, and wireless charging module. The wireless charging module is optional, but I didn't know the condition of the old one, so I purchased another. With our parts gathered, it's time to disassemble this iPhone 11 Pro. I'm going to start by removing the logic board, and to do that I'll need to disconnect several flex cables, remove the SIM card tray, and we're going to take out the rear facing camera. After unscrewing its bracket, we can simply remove the rear camera module and unfasten this bracket holding in the charging port cable. Then, using the standoff bit, I can unscrew the three screws holding it in place and simply remove our logic board. Next to come out is our Face ID module, which you can see has taken quite a beating. Moving down to the lower portion of the device, there is 16 screws I'll need to remove from this area, not including the 4 from the bracket we removed earlier. Not only is that a lot of screws, but there is 3 different types: tri-wing, standoff, and Phillips. So you'll need to keep changing your screwdriver bit throughout this whole repair. After successfully removing all of those screws and a few flex cables, we can then pry up on our charging port assembly, which is still glued into position. Using a plastic spudger, I can help separate that adhesive and lift out the charging port. Next to come out is the old battery. Trying to pull its removal tabs, they snapped right off. But thankfully the housing is so bent I could just pry it out with a spudger. We can proceed by removing the SIM card eject pin before turning our attention to the top of the device, where we can remove the screws and brackets holding the antenna and power button cable in place. The rear microphone is hidden under this bracket and piece of rubber. Removing those, you can see our microphone. I'll need to remove that, and I tried using various things, but I ended up just snapping it right off. The mistake I made was trying to get out two pieces at once. Make sure to remove the microphone first before trying to get its plastic bracket out. I had to remove it with the glass still attached and then clean it off by hand using some tweezers. This is all necessary because our replacement housing comes with absolutely no new parts, so everything down to the mesh grills and antennas need to be transferred across. Speaking of antennas, you can see this one right here is entirely snapped off. We'll be harvesting the screws and installing a new antenna when it comes time to reassemble. I'll also need to remove the many brackets on the side of this phone which hold in place the display. These will be transferred across to our new housing later on. I'll also harvest the screws from our power button assembly and the volume buttons. Our new housing did come with replacement metal buttons, however it is lacking the spring and retaining clip which holds them into place, so we'll need to take those off of our old housing and transfer them across later on as well. This part of the repair is the most time consuming. Large parts are easy to remove in comparison to all the little screws, brackets and grills we need to remove for a housing replacement. It's easy to see how people lose parts and how housing replacements don't get done properly. Even these tiny little pieces of mesh from the speaker grills need to be transferred to the new housing. There is a way of replacing the back glass using lasers, but it's expensive and wouldn't work in the case of this mangled iPhone. With the grills removed, we have completely tore down the iPhone 11 Pro. You can see just how many screws and parts we needed to remove. In comparison, this is the S21 completely disassembled. It has a total of 24 screws holding it together, which is slightly more than what this iPhone uses to hold the charging port in place. Regardless, it's time to get everything transferred into our new housing, which you can see here is completely empty, but is looking a lot nicer than our old one. I'll start by installing our new volume and power buttons into place before reattaching the retaining clip and its accompanying spring. The spring attaches to the button itself, but is held in place by the retaining clip as well. It's a very complicated setup and can be a little bit difficult to align the spring correctly and have it sit in position. But with some careful maneuvers and plenty of patience, we managed to get those reinstalled. I can then proceed to install the brackets which are responsible for holding our front display in place. With that, it's now time to crack out our new Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antenna cable and get it prepped for installation. I applied some more adhesive to hold it down into position and removed some protective film over some already applied adhesive on the cable. Lining everything up, I can press it down into place. After fastening 3 tri-wing screws, it's now time to get installed our new power button flex cable. This flex cable also houses the rear-facing microphone and LED flash. I can then fasten the remaining screws for both the power button flex cable and the Wi-Fi antenna. I will also install the special bracket which holds in place the LED flash, and then we can install the microphone. I'll apply a piece of adhesive to help hold it down into place. After which I can install the rubber piece and the metal plate on top. Next to screw in is the power button itself. After fastening the 2 Phillips head screws, I can adhere down the cable. For our volume cable, I'll need to install our new mute switch, which is held in with these 2 metal tabs. Verifying that it works correctly, I can remove the protective film on the adhesive for the wireless charging coil and stick everything down into place. I can then fasten the volume and mute switch with the several Phillips head screws. Afterwards, I can install this piece of plastic which covers up some of the screws on the left-hand side. I have absolutely no idea what it's for. It doesn't seem to have any specific purpose, but it was there originally, and trying to keep this phone as original as possible is my aim with this repair. Because there's so much inside this phone, it's easy for people to miss installing some of these smaller pieces, but if the repair is done right, it should be good as new. After getting these mesh grills installed, it's finally time to reinstall the charging port. Simply pressing it down into place, I can fasten all of those screws we removed earlier. This charging port assembly houses a lot more than just a lightning connector. It's got its own motherboard and what looks like some antennas that are connecting to the frame. Reinstalling the Taptic engine, we can connect it into place, as well as a few other brackets which hold down the microphone. I'll install the speaker assembly and screw it down into place. Moving across to the old housing, I'm going to grab this gold contact, which I'll need to transfer to our new housing. This makes connection with the Face ID module, which will go in next. I will attempt to straighten it as best I can. Getting a closer look at the module, you can see the dot projector is cracked at the top, so the Face ID sensor may not work. We'll be installing it anyway, as Apple won't allow us to replace this. Next to go in is our logic board. Once aligned, I can fasten the 3 standoff screws and start reconnecting all of the flex cables. I'll need to salvage the old earpiece assembly from our old display, as it's also paired to the phone. Once we remove it from whatever's left of our old screen, we can transfer it to our new one. Flipping it over, we can reinstall the 3 screws, securing it down into place. Next to go in is our camera module. I'll remove the protective film from the housing and take a look at our old camera. It was dented, and whilst it still worked, it wasn't focusing correctly, and just to be safe, I decided to install a new one. This used Apple camera will give us the best quality. After it's connected, we'll secure it into place with its bracket. Proceeding, it's time to install our new battery. I could have used the old one, but I'm sure I'd get plenty of comments saying that it was bent and dangerous to use. So to keep those people very happy, I've installed a new one. I will need to install one last bracket before installing the new water-resistant seal. After lining it up into position, I can press it down into place with a plastic spudger. With that, it's time to get our new display connected and the bracket reinstalled. This will secure all of our cables into position and ensure they don't come loose once the phone is sealed up. We can reconnect the 2 battery connections to both the motherboard and the charging port and install the brackets going over each battery connection. Giving the inside a good dusting, we can then test out our phone to make sure it's working before we seal everything back down. Plugging it in, you can see it powers on and everything appears to be working all right. However, in true iPhone style, we get a display and battery message saying the components aren't able to be verified as genuine. With that, it's time to seal up our phone, so I'm going to remove the plastic protective film over the water-resistant seal and seal down our new display into place. After firmly pressing in all the sides, I can reinstall the 2 pentalobe screws into the bottom of the phone and start removing the plastic protective film, starting with the one going around the edge of our new housing. I can reinstall our SIM card tray, remove the protective film over the Apple logo, and lastly, install a tempered glass screen protector on our new display panel. And we're done. So this is it, an amazing transformation of a once destroyed iPhone 11 Pro. It's now unrecognizable from what we started with at the beginning of the video. I had low hopes when I saw the extent of the damage. While we did have to replace quite a few pieces, there is lots we saved, like the motherboard, charging port, speakers, all of the screws and brackets. Now the phone is back in a usable state. However, using genuine Apple parts or not, we cannot avoid Apple's battery and display messages which now appear. The True Tone function has been purposely disabled because of my display replacement and is now completely missing from settings. You can get it back by reprogramming the display serial numbers to make the phone believe it's the original screen. However, you need the old display to do this. In the battery section, the battery health has also been purposely disabled, and it now says the battery needs servicing, an issue that will even arise if you swap batteries between two brand new iPhones. And as for Face ID, it doesn't work as the dot projector is damaged, an issue I could have easily fixed by replacing the module. However, due to software pairing, the Face ID feature would become purposely disabled, so it's broken Face ID or broken Face ID. While we own the phone, we don't own the software, and from what I can understand, it looks like they can do this until there's some kind of right to repair laws that prevent these types of anti-repair mechanisms. The phone plus repairs totaled 469 Australian dollars or around 303 US, which I think was a great deal if you're willing to put in the effort. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the phone restoration playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any tips or what tools I use to repair devices, be sure to check out my website, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.